Hello, everyone. Welcome to our world today, the Unionist perspective. We're very happy to have you here. This is most probably the very last live of 2024. I know so many surprises for you in 2025 that are going to come in gradually. We can't wait to talk about them. So yeah, let's make this last discussion of the year a good one. And I think it now makes sense that our main topic for today was kind of a cool one. It's more about culture than um, climate crisis and or politics. Um, and it's really cool. It's the story of a young woman that is from several Native American tribes and that became a model. And she explains why she now works with brands that may have done like something akin to like cultural appropriation in the past. And she kind of explains her train of thought. And I thought it was very beautiful to read. And I thought it was kind of close to the message that we want to share in unionism. So I would love for Sage, who researched this, to kind of explain the story of Quannah Chasinghorse. Yes, Quannah Chasinghorse, and the message that she's sharing behind the article in the New York Times, I think. Yeah, Sage, take it away.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So Quannah Chasinghorse, she is a Native American model and activist for the indigenous community. She does actually do activism about climate change too, and other environmental causes because those issues really impact the Native community in the US. But yeah, she has a really compelling life purpose story. I find to be really interesting. She, she was born in the Navajo Reservation in Arizona, but she also had roots in and lived in Alaska, and she also lived in the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. So she kind of has indigenous roots, but from different parts of like the continent. And she said that she did a lot of traveling as a child. Her parents, I believe she said, were Christian missionaries in Mongolia, for example. And as very young, she started to take an interest in fashion, like high fashion modeling. She would like imitate their movements in their walk and try to dress, like them or create high fashion type looks from an early age. She said she was like obsessed with it, and she felt like, it was her calling. And then just at the age of 18, she was spotted by a Calvin Klein scout and recruited to become a model for one of their campaigns. And she was she's really been engaging with fashion modeling in this very deliberate, conscious way because she knew that a lot of the high fashion brands had used like indigenous American like fashion styles or motifs or even types of clothing, but kind of like without really acknowledging and crediting Native peoples like properly for it, or without like involving um, Native peoples, to the extent that would be appropriate for that. And that's how she felt about it. So she was kind of like unsure if she wanted to take all the offers to work with these um, like companies, but she decided that she did want to because it would be a way to create change within the system and, a way to kind of like represent indigenous people and bring people, help people connect like the clothing styles with the people, who like pioneered them and everything like that, and kind of create a healthier relationship there of like collaboration, right? Between indigenous peoples and the companies, right? And I thought that it was a really cool story because it shows somebody who embraced her life purpose. She has had a lot of courage, um, like facing stuff that is difficult, like that is a difficult path to take. Like you're gonna have some challenges emotionally, and in your career with that. And yeah, I just thought it was cool of her. Um, and it kind of just shows how you can take the system that already exists and that, and then help it evolve, and like accommodate more people and stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically the summary of the story. There's an article about her in the BBC that came out recently. So just this past week. So yeah, what did you guys feel from that, and what lessons and like insights could we take from that story?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. What I really loved about this story, as I was saying, and of thinking that it's close to unionism, what unionism stands for, is that she went to work with brands that didn't really involve Native Americans in their designs, involved Native American culture in their designs before, which happens with a lot of ethnic groups at this time in the world. And I think she really has like a strong activist story. Like she's not just like doing social activism, like she's taken to the streets several times for several causes. And what I like about it is that, activists most of the time, like, they prefer to associate with a type of world that is more anarchist and completely get out of the system because they think that if they are in the system, they are rotten as well, and it's not good anyway. And and if you are trying to change things from the inside of the system, or if you benefit from the system in any way, like usually people may say that you're kind of a sellout, or you may face like cancel culture because like we're in such a polarized world that people cannot even compute that discussions like this exist where we're saying like, hey, there's a part of truth in this side of a story, and there's a part of truth in this side of a story as well. And what she said was so interesting. I could have stayed out, she said. But then I would have been angry and tired again and again and again. And where does that lead me? And that was so, so powerful. Because if you stay in anger and if you stay in separation, if you stay in fighting, like you're going to exhaust your resources. And then she said, it was so well written. She said, like, what people don't see from a collaboration is the long discussions that may have happened before, where responsibility was taken. Um, she really wanted to make this move, and she really wanted this to not be just a collaboration for money, but really like something that changed something for her community as well. And I love that she went um, in a beauty system that is kind of elitist or very closed off. And her difference was that she had the tattoos that her mother did to her from a very young age. And that's that's her difference, and I love that that's the difference that she brought in modeling, in addition to like being Native American. And yeah, I love this because this type of speech discourse was so much more peaceful. And she's showing the world that you can be an activist and still be in the system and changing from the inside. And that reminds me of maybe a discussion that was done in life purpose class or twin flame ascension school where like people will get angry if we have not solved climate change yet, but if we're not there yet, we're not there yet. But in order to work on changing things, we actually need the resources of a system so that we can work on changing things. And so we can have a faster forward motion. But if we're not at level 99 of video games, and if we're doing level 25 over and over again because we haven't learned the lesson, then that's where we're at. And this was really like, it's really eye-opening to see things this way. And that's what I liked. It was very relaxing to read about her story, where she comes from, and why she chose the things she chose in the past 2 to 3 years. So yeah, well, that was my point of view. How do you guys feel about it as well? Yeah, Joe?
I feel very similar to what you were saying. And I'd like to add that it does feel that Quannah Chasinghorse, followed her heart. And that was a core lesson for me for life purpose class. And it definitely shows that she's been through a lot of challenges, especially given the circumstances that she grew up in. But when you have something in your heart and you know that it's part of your design, no challenges will ever stop you because you'll be left with that regret of like not overcoming that challenge and seeing what the next door brings and the next door and the next door. And I really feel like she had fun with it. Because, fashion can be fun and modeling can be fun. So I feel that her creativity really helped support her through those challenging times. And thankful for that because we do need representation just like her to follow her dreams and her heart and her design so that she can marry all three and continue to strive forward for what she does because she was so meant to do all that she's been doing. And that's why it's so successful and proliferating and thriving and blossoming as it is. And it's really nice and refreshing to hear a story such as hers. So thank you, Sage, for bringing that up.
So I kind of feel like there's a little bit of schooling in authenticity, right? So she is kind of being true to herself, but also true to the system that she operates within. And she's using both authentically to position her message. And I feel like that's probably something that could be quite beneficial to just about anybody, to understand that you don't have to be something else to work within a system. You don't have to reshape the system immediately. You can very granularly start to make strides. And so another lesson for me is the lesson of progression. And it's something that we sometimes tend to overlook because we want immediate results in this culture of instant gratification. We chase the immediate result, and often the immediate result is not necessarily similar to the expectation. And so I feel like she's doing it in a more peaceful and profound way. She's trying to challenge the system in a peaceful manner. And we have spoken countless times about, is there a place for violence when transformation is required? And sometimes there is, sometimes it's necessary, but this is the other side of the coin. The other side saying that actually the violence is not necessary under these circumstances. And what needs to happen under these circumstances are small incremental improvements or small incremental challenges so that you're painting a tapestry, right? You're not remaking the world immediately. You are undoing a strand of a tapestry at a time and replacing it with something else. And that also feels quite peaceful. And I feel like that's been the lesson of the twin flame journey, of the spiritual journey, is that the improvements are incremental if you keep going. And so you can see a real life example showing incremental challenges to a system, and whether it changes immediately or not is actually immaterial because the message is landing. And again, the message lands because you're planting seeds progressively. And we all know that you're not going to reap the fruit of the seed that you planted immediately. So it's also a lesson in patience. It's being comfortable to wait for the improvement, even though you're continuing to work towards the improvement.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, what I feel is that she followed her joy, as Nadia was saying. Um, it feels like you may look at her story and say like, oh my God, like she went to Mongolia, lived with grandparents, which she didn't share the belief of. And when she was in Alaska, like they were dirt poor and homeless, and her mom like um tried to hide this fact. But I think the reason why it was included in the article is pretty much because there is such a thing as she was always doing what felt fun, like she was always playing with life and her circumstances, no matter where she was. Like she felt like her Alaskan experience was really fun, probably thanks to her mother, a very loving mother, who really tried to make it seem like a game, to spend time in nature, and how she was just like really having fun doing watching the modeling shows in Mongolia, and how she did exactly the same when she was scouted have a model before her first runway. And I just love that there is this thing like this absence of inhibitions, um, absence of like feeling trapped in everything that she did. And since she was not feeling trapped, like it led her exactly where she needed to be. And a lot of us actually, most of the time, feel very trapped by our upbringing, our circumstances, especially when we didn't have people encouraging us to be our true, authentic selves. And stories like that really help us um, claim that fun and play, and really tell us that you can have fun and play and make money out of it at just about any age in this life. And really like a kid, like a child, and probably the things that authentically lighted you up when you were a kid are probably very similar to what you want to be doing right now. So I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah. Anything else to add to his story? No?
I feel like there's a part where authenticity is also saying, like, I know I'm involved in an industry that may have been accused of cultural appropriation and those kind of things, but culturally, she's still showing up in the culture that she was born into. And interestingly enough, she wears the physical signs of her culture, which often people don't. So, face tattoos might have been something that may have lost her certain opportunities. But then in the same way, she's chosen to take the very visual representation of her culture and honor it and use it authentically because we are all a visual representation of something. Hers is just much more visible. And she's still honoring the sense that I have of what that indigenous culture is from a peaceful point of view. So she's showing up peacefully, representing herself and her people peacefully, and challenging the system in such a way that you cannot then devalue the culture. And I think that's a very important link because sometimes in our choice to force transformation, we also inadvertently destroy the brand of the culture, for lack of a better phrasing. But I mean, like just she has shaped herself around a culture. She shaped her brand around a culture. She very visibly shows up in her culture and she very peacefully represents her culture.
Yeah, pretty much. Sage, did you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I felt that her story really shows the virtue of, taking the good from anything, and just like you take the good from anything and then you just surrender anything that doesn't feel good, that doesn't serve you. So, like, you know, with her upbringing, for example, yes, like her family had challenges with poverty. And Quannah Chasinghorse did not do that, right? Like she overcame that challenge and now she's, very well paid, I assume. I haven't looked at any of the figures, but yeah, I mean, that's awesome. She took the virtues that she learned as a kid, such as self-confidence, a deep connection to her roots and her culture, a deep connection to like the earth and the environment and stuff and all of the values connected and to that. And she is using that and imparting that to her work. And then she's also embracing the positive aspects of the fashion industry, right? So there are positive aspects to it. Like it gives a lot of value, like the creativity, the visibility that it gives you, and like, the core value of like of beauty, and innovation that it has. So she's embracing all of the positive, but at the same time, just by being who she is and just by living her life, because she like does a lot of interviews and talks about Native American issues and climate issues, right? Just by being who she is in that space, she's pushing back against the problems, right? Like the superficiality and the kind of like um, lack of inclusivity, right? That the industry has. That's the challenge of the fashion industry that they've had for a long time, right? So that's what she's doing. So she's um, embracing the good and then she's discarding the not good, right? And like it's really, I feel like it's really powerful. I just I don't see any problem with that. Like I just feel like it's very much in integrity, even if some people might be like, "Oh, you're selling out, man. That sucks," you know. And it's just like, no, 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 no. She's not. She's um, it's a marriage of two worlds, of different worlds, right? And that's a cool thing. And I feel like that's a healing thing, you know. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's the definition of going where the love is. Um, at least for a purpose. Yeah. So that's cool to see. Awesome. So, I feel like it's time to transition to another topic. And this is a topic that is close to my heart because it's about my home country, France, France. But Nadia researched this topic, and it's basically about the fact that the parliament blocked and dissolved the government. Um, and then there was like kind of a few days of not having a government, a little bit of a crisis, and Emmanuel Macron um, chose a new prime minister. So I know that Nadia kind of have like the summary of the story and also some questions. So I'm curious to know like what you have to tell us about this.
Yeah, I researched specifically on who Macron had uh, chose for president. And so I will be going through that, of course, during chime in. And yeah, I would love your input on that as well. We know that for a couple of years now, France has been going through some economic difficulties. And as we know from Life Purpose, when you're met with challenges, when you overcome them, you're met with even greater um, success. So I believe it really started to show around 2017 the economic debt that was getting created. And Macron is a centralist, so he's not too much to the left, too much to the right. And his idea was to increase the tax a bit and lower the spending of the government. However, the president that was before um, the one that he elected, I can't recall his name,
Prime Minister.
prime minister, yes. He kind of did not follow through with that budgeting plan, and he went ahead and overspent. And from that, it was a swift decision to have a new president. And now critics are saying that how can the new president overcome this mountain of issues that are going on in France economically? Because the debt is continuously increasing, as well as government pensions um, seem to remain the same, like no one's getting an increase in pay. So the expenses in France are increasing, but no one's getting a higher raise or higher pay, as well as the economic debt is rising. So Macron is left with a very difficult situation right now of how he can prevent a lockdown of his government by creating a budget plan that will hopefully start to resolve this issue. Now, critics are saying that it cannot be done. Whether you create a budget plan or you start to resolve it politically, there's going to be some issues that you cannot maneuver because the left is having issues with the um, spending cut. sorry, the right is having issues with the spending cut, and the left is having issues with the pensions not being raised, as well as the age for retirement being raised. So, if we take that from a micro scale of looking at France to a macro scale, we're having a issue with the European Union, especially given that Belgium and Greece's economy is far worse than France. And so they're also not in any kind of power play when it comes to the union as well. Because of France's situation and because of Germany's situation, now it seems that Hungary and Italy are leading in the counselor for European Union, which most people do not align with. So now we're having an issue where they want the leadership that was once there, Germany and France, to continue, but they have to get well first and they have to stabilize first in order for that to happen. And I do have a question for you, Irene, about prime minister versus president. And of course, I would love to learn more about what's going on with France financially and how this is affecting us worldwide.
Um, so Macron is the president, is the state's president, the republic's president. The thing is that the president in France has a lot of power. It is unusual because we are one of those countries where the parliament, this is a parliamentary state. So the parliament is supposed to have a lot of power. So we're kind of are sharing the executive power. The executive power is being shared between Macron and the parliament, and to represent kind of a link between the governments, because he's not chief of government in a parliament, in the parliament state. You have a prime minister. So usually the prime minister is the one that takes all the decisions. This is kind of like a coalition in France, usually. Except if like the prime minister is from the same party as the president, and it's not called a coalition. It's called like, you know, you know, co-living together politically. And basically, the prime minister is the only one of the government compared to the president that can enter parliament, discuss with parliament, negotiate. So I hope this brings a little bit more clarity here. It's kind of France is like a little bit, specific, peculiar in this way. The problem is like some of the things that you're saying, like I'm learning right now because the way it is inside is not at all how it is presented by international, politically well-meaning journalists that probably produce the articles that made you do your research. The problem is that um, I said it before. I don't think Macron has bad intentions, but he's so bad at communicating that basically people are thinking that, first of all, he dissolved Parliament in June after the far right won the European elections in the hopes that it would kind of, calm down their power and break them down. They didn't win the majority, but nobody really won the majority. However, far left and allies of the far left, so all of the left coalition basically won the election, won the parliament election, won more seats. And how it looked is that he did not want to elect a prime minister from this part of the parliament. So basically, like you have to elect a prime minister from the party that has won the more votes, or a coalition that has won the more votes. And he did not. He was saying that electing a prime prime minister from the left was dangerous and it would put the country into chaos. And yes, the prime minister that he had before, Gabriel Attal, who shouldn't have been here for as long as he did, basically spent twice or thrice the budget that he had for the Olympic Games and twice or thrice the budget that he had for pension, social security. I don't remember, but it went somewhere where it should have gone. We didn't know that Emmanuel Macron wasn't necessarily agreeing to that, but basically he wanted to have a new prime minister that would go his way in order to kind of save France economically before his mandate is ending. But on the outside, the problem is that it looks forced and almost undemocratic. Um, and like he's not playing for the games. And he invoked a new prime minister, well, old now, but the prime minister that he chose at the end of summer invoked something that would block the parliament from saying anything so that it could pass a law that would change social security, France, land of social security, so that they could make economies on it, which kind of meant that the citizens would pay more. And also, he was touching social security. For a lot of politicians, you don't touch social security in France. And so Parliament, in an unprecedented show of unanimity, dissolved the government. It's almost impossible to dissolve a government. You have to have three-fifths, no, a third-fifth of a parliament, a lot of people out of many hundreds of people voting against you so that it can be done. And it was done for the first time. Obviously, people were not happy, which is it's understandable. So the new prime minister was somewhat of an essentialist, but is an old essentialist, who has ties to the right, but he's less right-winged than the person that was blocked, fired. So I guess he's hoping that because of his really good comprehension of both parties, the new prime minister can do something that will not lead to lockdown. That's it. But people are not happy about it. But more happy than the right wing's prime minister. And
I have so many questions.
fire away. Please,
So
please.
are you saying that you have a parliament and a government,
Yes.
and these are two separate bodies?
These are two separate bodies with separate powers.
And then you have a president and a prime minister. The president leads parliament, the prime minister leads the government.
Yeah.
Isn't it the other way around?
Oh, the president leads the government. Well, president leads the state.
Which is the
But
parliament.
no, no.
I'm very confused. Just
And the prime
explain that
minister
structure.
doesn't even lead the parliament.
Or
He's like he leads the assemblies, so he's present, but there is a chief of the assemblies because there are two chambers of the parliament. And the president is like it's like it represents the state. Um, it's complicated, and the problem is that in before World War II, the president did not have a lot of things to do. The problem is that Charles de Gaulle, war hero of World War II, wanted to have a lot of things to do. So historically now, the president has a lot of things to do, but usually like he should be like the Queen in England, not many things to do.
So
It should
that's what it
be
sounds like,
perfect.
right? So it sounds like your president is like an uncrowned king kind of thing.
Mm.
Maybe. France has a lot of things to heal, guys. Like we have a lot of things that we do good. I do think that we're so arrogant about a lot of things, and I think this arrogance is showing in the president. The system probably isn't right, but that's the best that is working for us right now. And the president kind of like he has meetings with his government, so his prime minister every week. So this means that there's kind of a consultation happening every week so that the prime minister can propose laws. He can propose laws, some laws, not all the laws that the parliament can propose, but some, and push the agenda of the government from his side. And the president can just like kind of try to see how this all is from afar. And he leads most of the international relations and war relations, um, which has like his direct power instead of the rest. But yeah, so when the prime minister and the president don't can't stand each other, it's very difficult because then the parliament also can stand the government and it can lead to love blocks. Fun.
It sounds like a very expensive governance system.
Oh my
So,
God.
like if I put it in relation to an organization, it would kind of be like an executive committee and a strategic committee having separate powers led by separate people that mandates kind of overlap and make it very confusing for the company to operate well.
They kind of make it work, but when you expose it like that, it's complicated, yes. And also, like, you have to understand that up until this day, I didn't even like think about this because I went to a MIT type school for political science, which means that people were just like, France is the best, and like this is our government was, and nothing else. Like it's complicated, but this is it, as if we couldn't change it. And yeah, when you see it like this, like you're thinking like something doesn't work, but you have to make it work because like you probably won't be able to change the entire system in the 21st century now over 5 years, and we need solutions before before 2050. So, and there is another problem here is that a lot of people here in France, I don't have this because I have a double culture from where I was born, even though I am French, 100% French. A lot of people consider the Republic as kind of like a religion from the French Revolution. French Revolution tried to place it with like religious symbols and completely eradicate kind of the church. And then in 20th century, we separated the church and the state. So basically, like for a lot of people, left or right, like you don't touch our liberties. Do not touch social security. And that's why people go to the streets so often. Um, and I hope that gives you like a little bit of an understanding of how French people are. There are a lot of things that we do well. I think there are a lot of things that we're stubborn and it makes it complicated. So yeah, but they make it work. Like it's more complicated than that, but I feel like it shouldn't be complicated, to explain it. But yeah, it kind of works. when
So, and
people
I
are
I think
going.
that's the fact that you say it kind of works says to me it kind of also doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So the caveat is that in the workings, there's far too many cogs. And I
Mm,
feel like that's potentially why you have so many glitches from a political point of view. Like you eventually get to getting those wheels grinding again in a reasonable direction. But it probably requires a lot more effort to do that. And I feel like it almost feels like an administrative burden, not only from a governance point of view, but for the populace. Like, like who has power over what? Who makes rules for this? How does the prime minister pass a bill or get something passed that kind of almost curtails the power of parliament? It sounds very unusual.
mhm. It is, but in a sense, like you can kind of see the same political trends in France as in anywhere. So I would say that even though it's very complicated, a lot of people are having the same challenges. I think we're just now uncovering like how deep challenges may be, and also how much French people have a long way to go in terms of like humbling themselves and accepting change, accepting that sometimes are not right. But maybe here it's like um administrative cogs that don't seem to make sense for anyone that is outside, and even sometimes when you're inside. But maybe in Spain it can be like the region that have power, and then sometimes it creates confusion between national power and regions. And that's how we have such a catastrophe in Valencia when there were floods. Maybe in the US, it's like national state and federal state. Um, in Germany as well, like we have the lenders, which are regions, and the national states. And um, yeah, I'm curious to understand more why it is so difficult for us. Like, what are our unique challenges? And yet, why still, again and again, like we're seeing the same trends anywhere? And I'm curious. I don't think I have the answer. I don't think we'll find the answer tonight, but um, it was good to talk about it at least because it can feel a little bit heavy. Um, People not wanting to admit that they're wrong. But yeah.
And the reason why I'm curious is because from a South Africa point of view, we have a national government. And then we have provinces, but each province has a provincial government that doesn't deviate out of the national government's regulations and that kind of stuff. So they don't have the power of what you would know, for instance, states to have their own government and stuff like that, that where a state can make certain laws versus a national law. We don't have that. And so the parallel that you drew, I think, is definitely there because, for instance, like I know with Switzerland, they have cantons, and each canton has its government and it's fully ruling and things and something to and kind of to that effect. But then there's also the national government. So I feel like that's where there's a little bit of two accelerators and not enough of a clutch and a brake. And that's what's kind of sometimes puts the car into a wheel spin.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see it because even in provinces, like we have sometimes this double government, like someone like we have a department and we have a region, and the department is assigned a region, but each have like kind of like not a government, but still, and sometimes it's like kind of difficult to see like which does what, even though like the government, national government, really tried to clean this up a few years ago, and they did well, but I think I'm kind of starting to realize that if the president, which is like the national leader, is overstepping, like um is setting a consciousness of overstepping nationally, if that makes sense. Yeah. Curious how you guys feel backstage and Nadia about this. So I know this is complicated, but I did not even want to talk about this tonight, but seems like we are.
Yeah, I could feel that, but I definitely want to bring core healing to this. And what comes up to me that is like two major blocks to the core healing is the government overspending and the pension being not equivalent to the lifestyle that French citizens are living. So there, I feel that just like we've healed through many of countries, a lack of oversight for the people in France, and not dedicating their budget and dedicating their energy towards the benefit of the people, but rather of the gildedness of France. And yeah, that's what I feel. Once we touch on that, we can reach the core of the issue and really heal that to, a sufficient amount.
That's well articulated. Like I can definitely see where this happens in society for sure. Sage, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I agree with seeing Nadia. I feel like the core of it is like arrogance because arrogance is when you think you know best, right? But you really don't. And at a spiritual level, we always know, right? Like God or the divine, however you want to call it, knows best, right? And uh, we only know what to do when we're open to like the divine or like open to love. And when you're like so set on something, like when you like try to make basically when you try to make something else your God, like your self-image or an aspect of yourself, or like in what you were describing as the government, or in a way is kind of idol or made like sacred almost. It sounded like that's what you were saying. Like that's where the issue.
Some foundations of the Republic and the constitutions and liberties and things we have done in France, especially when it's happened to France first, are something that people feel like are untouchable. So the government itself is not idolized, but the idea of a republic is kind of like idolized.
Um, okay, and so basically, so France is in a situation where like if they don't cut spending or raise revenue, then what? They're gonna be like bankrupt or like lose their credit rating
I don't
or
think we're bankrupt yet. Probably we'll have some sort of bankrupt grading or something. Definitely spent too much in the Olympic Games, and there's definitely like kind of a black hole in the social security system that needs to be changed. But people are just after so many things happening to like the retirement age, and people feeling like they're just going to be really taken advantage of. They don't necessarily want social security to be touched then, but security really does have a deep hole in it where it doesn't necessarily make sense financially as it did in the 60s, which is understandable, you know.
so basically they can't afford it. Or they have to make some changes, but people are like, oh no, you can never touch that. Like
Yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much, I think.
Yeah. And
They'll tell you that it's something else.
okay.
And the arrogance, lack of communication skills of Emmanuel Macron probably helps in them telling you that it's something else. But I think at the core, it's this like I don't want um to have to change in order to be in a better situation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted
Sorry, Nadia. I just like something and that's what was my biggest feeling, is the feeling of administering this is very expensive. And I feel like that's where the drain on the financial resources are. Because the delivery and the administration to deliver just sounds far too heavy. Like all of those public servants cost money to the country. I mean, nobody's doing it for love and fresh air. So that's an expense that your country could do without if they streamlined all of those structures.
Yeah, the real problem is that usually when it's done in fear or in old economics types of like system and pawns moving like, kind of like in a chess game, like usually the first thing that are taken advantage of and have less money are education and health, and not in the right way. Like it feels like it will again go to the nurse that does a 16-hour shift and not actually on the actual part of the social security system that needed to be changed, or at least it did for 5 years, and now finally we are saying like, oh, we actually need to change the social security instead of attacking like hospitals or teachers. And yeah, everyone would tell you in all countries, like it costs money. Elon Musk wants to let these public services people go, but like the way governments are doing it doesn't feel peaceful either. So that's why it's black. I don't think there is a side here that is necessarily wrong. And that's a problem. I don't think they're wrong. I don't think they are. It's just not well managed in order to have a loving solution for everybody.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring some symbolism into this. When I remember France, or I'm reminded of France, it's by one of my favorite statues, which is the Statue of Liberty, which was gifted to us by the French government or parliament, I'm not sure. And it was created in copper, and it stood for the values of independence and liberty. So, what I feel about the French culture in France is that it can stick to its core values. And just like the Statue of Liberty, who was supposed to be copper its entire life, it changed into green because the atmosphere, the pollution had rusted, changed the entire copper metal into green. And so we're at this point where we can accept that France has things to adapt to because of the environment and the circumstances. And it's green right now. And it's okay to be green because even when you look at it, still its beautiful self, and it still stands for what it stands for, its core values. But we must understand the reality of it and accept it. And then it allows for the values to be truly represented as it is and as it always stands for.
That's
Absolutely.
like the oh no, I just want that's you helped me see that, that's the connection between the two topics today, right? Because what Quannah Chasinghorse's value was sticking to her core values, but honoring where she and everybody in society are. And like, so you accept the reality of what's now, but you still stick to your core values, but you do it step by step. And that seems to be the lesson that France is learning, and probably every country is learning. Because you're like, we have these high ideals, but we're like, but where actually are we right now? And how do we like take steps toward it instead of being like, it's either 100% or it's 0%, that's like extremist thinking, right? So that's really cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it shows everything that we've said this year about like how superficial people are thinking about change. Um, and how we really need to change at a deeper level. And deeper level doesn't never like change the core values, but it evolves with society or the self if it's like just an individual. Beautiful. What a nice way to conclude the year of discussion. Thank you so much, my team, for this beautiful discussion today. And thank you to everyone who is watching us from Facebook or YouTube. And if you enjoy this, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, give us your insights, your ideas, so that we can continue to do more of those. And yeah, I guess see you in 2025. Bye.